Welcome everybody, I'm Kamil Sarji, your host. I'm with Gold Door Realty, and I have Paul Jones here with Concierge of New England. We're doing a just 2 minutes interview, and the way it works is just first 2 minutes are just random questions, and then we go into the real estate focused interview. So before we start,
what do we got here? Okay. Oh, all right. All right. What are we celebrating?
This is the 10th episode.
No
and
kidding.
Yeah, you're the 10th guest, and next time this is ever gonna happen is like the 100th episode. So
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you. Sorry, my little thing didn't work, but
All right, now to the real stuff. I was like, oh man, I hope this thing. I was like stressing out about the confetti thing opening up, and
perfect.
it's my only one. That's why I was like. Okay, now that we're prepped up, you ready for the questions?
I'm ready.
All right, let me get this timer. Okay. All right, you can see it, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So here we go. And now. All right. So we're all young at heart. What's your best carnival ride?
Oh, anything that's a roller coaster, anything that goes up and fast.
Okay. Up and down? Or just like
Yeah, although when I was a kid, there was one carnival ride which I loved, which was, it was like a Sphinx boat, and it would go back and forth like a pendulum. And eventually you'd be almost all the way up straight looking down and come all the way
slide
back.
down.
That was my favorite.
All right. Next question is, do you believe aliens exist, or is it the way the government's trying us to buy, is trying to get us to buy more telescopes?
Well, it probably worked because I bought a telescope for my daughter last year. But I think there's plenty out there that we haven't discovered yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is true. They got you to get a telescope.
That's right.
Because you.
They
believe
got
in
me. They got me good.
Okay. If I was a monkey, what kind of monkey do you think I would be? Chimpanzee, orangutan, or gorilla?
Wow. How about, I think, ooh, that's a good question. Gorilla.
Gorilla?
Yeah.
Why?
Just a nice, I don't know. What a question. What monkey do you think you'd be?
I don't know. I'm not a monkey.
Damn.
Okay. If you were to put 3 things in a time capsule that goes all the way to 1962, what would you put in there?
That would be back in 1962?
In the back, yeah.
Send it back? Jeez. Probably a smartphone. My iWatch, and oh geez, probably a news article about the Red Sox winning the World Series in 2004.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What's better, Checkers or Connect 4?
Connect 4.
Awesome. Bada bing, that was it.
Yeah.
All right, the whole show's over.
That sounds good. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, see you next time. No, what did you think?
That was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, putting these things together is just have to think outside, think another universe if we were. So, Paul, tell me a little bit about what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, so I'm the owner of the Concierge of New England, which is an organization that focuses on advocacy, referrals, placement, and just general help for seniors and their families in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. For people who need assistance trying to navigate the senior living world, and that can be assisted living, can be memory care, can be nursing homes, whatever have you. It can be a difficult world to navigate. Even though we're all getting older older every day, nobody really stops to prepare or think about what the aging journey is going to be like and what turns and pitfalls can be waiting for them as they get older. I hear it all the time from families. I just bury me in my backyard. This is the house I want to live in for the rest of my life. Appreciate that 100%. But as families get older and they start confronting the realities of being older, and now because of physical limitations, they can't use the second floor of their house. Or, God forbid, somebody starts developing a cognitive disease. It becomes much more critical for families to recalibrate what their original plans were to match the realities of today. And so those families will start looking at what senior living and senior care is really all about. What the Care Concierge does is help those families make the best possible choice to get the best quality of life for their loved ones or for themselves if they're the potential resident, and the ability for them to age in place. So every recommendation we make, every move that we help families participate in, it's predicated on those two founding values: quality of life, aging in place.
So as far as like getting in touch with you, let's say someone is reaching that age, because then you have two sides. You have the elderly calling you directly. Do the kids call you?
All the time.
Okay. And it's tough conversation with the parents, or?
Yeah. 90%, especially when we first opened the Care Concierge in 2019, 90% of the phone calls I was getting were from families who were in the crisis. They had waited for some acute issue to occur because the conversations were so difficult to have with their loved ones. And so I'd have a lot of initial meetings with families sitting in the lobbies of hospitals or rehabs, talking with social workers and discharge planners about, okay, this person is no longer safe to go home. The family cannot or will not participate in a 24-hour round-the-clock home care program. What are we going to do, Paul? And he's like, oh, okay. So we'll figure this out. And that is where a lot of the calls come from. Even now, I get a lot of calls from hospitals, from home care agencies, from nursing homes, from rehabs, from elder law attorneys, people who are working with families who find themselves in a crisis mode. But more and more, especially since the COVID lockdowns have lessened and gone away in a lot of contexts, I've had a lot more phone calls from the potential resident themselves who are saying, you know what, I was isolated functionally for a couple of years, and it was very difficult for me to participate in the world. And I don't want to deal with owning a home anymore. I don't want to shovel my driveway. I don't want to rake my leaves. I want to be around other people. I don't want to wait for the crisis anymore. And so a lot more people now are starting that conversation earlier, which is really good because it also gives them the chance to take some time and really consider their options, which is now making these assisted living and memory care and skilled nursing buildings have to take a step back and go, okay, how are we going to improve our services? Because we have a more savvy, discerning, for lack of a better term, consumer.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
As far as like, you don't do insurance, but people who start paying the insurance for, what is it, caregiver insurance?
There's a long-term care insurance.
Yeah. So is that a good idea for people to get into?
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, everyone watching this, go get long-term care insurance. It's hard to get, especially as you're getting older, because the costs of senior care can be so exorbitant, especially the longer you wait. For point of reference, in Rhode Island here in 2024, the average cost of assisted living care in Rhode Island right now is about $5,000 a month. For memory care assisted living, you're over $6,000, $6,500 a month.
What's that mean, memory care? People who, sorry, go ahead.
No, you had it. So people who are living with a cognitive impairment. Alzheimer's disease is the most common. There's Lewy bodies dementia. There's Parkinson's related dementia, vascular. There's over 100 different types of identified memory disorders that are out there. So I'm a certified dementia practitioner. Prior to starting the Care Concierge, I was a memory care director. I was an executive director in assisted living buildings. I know this industry very well. And memory care needs are among the most critical needs that people require as they get older. And it's especially why myself and other people in the senior care industry, we beg families to help your loved one not be isolated at home, because isolation is going to cause cognitive defects as people get older. People need socialization. It's good medicine. Senior centers are critical infrastructure, places where people can go to meet other people and just be social and talk with one another. It's critical infrastructure.
So if someone doesn't have a family and also Alzheimer's is happening.
Yeah.
How do they get, or how, because they don't know that they need assisted living. What happens then? How, if there were people living in a house and nobody knows about them?
Guardianship typically will take effect at that time. So there are those cases out there. I've had a couple just this past year so far already where somebody will not have any family left for one reason or another. They have an acute issue either in their home or out in the community because they've become confused. Now they've left their home. Maybe they're driving. I had a family early this year. Their father got into the car, didn't realize what was going on. He drove almost through a gas station. It turns out he had Alzheimer's disease.
Oh my gosh.
And the family hadn't been in contact, and just life is what it is sometimes for these families, and that is what it is. The reality was we needed to deal with the situation as it was unfolding. The children didn't want to be responsible for their father for a number of reasons, and everyone's family has a story. Okay, so they were willing to sign over guardianship to a professional guardian, a professional fiduciary, somebody who would step in and make the medical and financial decisions for that person. So that was the person that we wound up working with to support this man as he went into his new home.
Okay.
So we did find him placement.
But he has a family. So what if someone doesn't have a family?
It's the same process. It
Okay.
goes.
The state gets involved?
Sometimes the state will have to get involved to appoint a guardian. Because in this case that I had mentioned, the family was willing to sign over any rights that they had to this fiduciary. So it went through the family, for lack of a better term. But for those who have no family, no familial ties whatsoever, the state will have to appoint a guardian. And it will typically start as a temporary emergency guardian, somebody who will step in to make those decisions for, typically it's a 90-day period before the court would then reassess, okay, is this person going to be the permanent guardian? Is there another guardian that can step in, a professional fiduciary, somebody
What's
like
their experience in life, the guardian? Are they...
It depends.
Are they attorney? Are they nurse, doctor? Like, what's their...
Sometimes it's somebody with either a financial, legal, or medical background.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a social worker. It can be somebody who has experience with working with the elderly.
So they're making the right decisions because of their experience. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Because sometimes you'll have a medical... I do a lot of education for medical professionals, especially in things like memory disorder and senior care that you would almost expect that would be part and parcel of what they would know. But having a medical degree or a law degree or anything like that doesn't mean you're going to be an expert in the whole field, the whole range of everything. So sometimes my experience has been that sometimes I've worked with folks who are guardians, very effective, very compassionate and caring and just competent guardians. But they have none of the degrees that you'd expect.
Yeah, you have to be gifted with that. So, all right, as far as in the real estate realm or my world, how do we, or what's the process when someone elderly wants to get into that assisted living situation? How do we come in? How's that get transitioned over? Do we have to sell the property first? Then they can go, like, how's that work?
Sometimes, I mean, the real estate industry is a crucial industry for people who are trying to explore the senior living world. And that's for a number of reasons, right? Because the financial reason is the first and most obvious reason, because as I had mentioned, senior care is expensive. You're getting a lot out of it. There's a lot of value there that we could sit and talk all day about what that cost incorporates and includes that I had mentioned earlier. But at the end of the day, the dollar and cents can be a bit of a sticker shock for people. And so for people who are considering a move to senior living, a lot of people will take a look at their primary asset and say, well, I'm going to sell my home and that is how I'm going to support my retirement living. And then retirement living could be an independent living, you downsize in a 55 plus apartment, you go into assisted living, or whatever your choices are going to be. But that primary asset would be the one to be sold. So financially speaking, real estate agents are critical because you'll be able to come in and help people get the maximum value for their property, which then they can translate into maximum return on that value for their post-retirement years. But then even beyond that, most real estate agents I work with have this really wonderful consultative air about them where they also are part, whether they realize it all the time or not, of helping people who are getting ready to transition into senior living make that move a lot easier. Because real estate agents that I've worked with over the years, they have this way of being able to sit down with their clients and talk about, what do you love about this house? What do you love about where you want to go next? And what do you love about the experience of being a homeowner? And what do you hate about it? You know, what do you really hate about it? And that's all great information for me to know too. But more than that, it gives perspective to the people who are getting ready to sell their home and move into senior living, where they can sit back and go, well, you know, I really love my neighbors. I love being able to have people over and entertain. This is a great entertaining dining room I have, and I can have people come in and do this. And I love my bedroom because it faces this direction. And
Because in assisted living, they have neighbor, like you can get involved in the community as much as you want, or you can isolate yourself as much as you want. So you have both. Yeah, it's great. I hope I never get to live alone, but yeah, I think just having that community is like awesome. I'm a people person, so I want that.
Me too. It's why when I'm discussing these options with my families, I'm really quick to remind them and everybody else I know, assisted living properties are not called assisted living facilities, not really. They're classified that way by the state to make it easier for how it's just regulations and classifications and all of that. But the common parlance of what assisted living is an assisted living community, because it's designed that way as a community style building where everyone has their own apartment. You have your bedroom, you have your bathroom. Some people have living rooms and balconies and patios and all of this stuff. But the major dining room or restaurant is on site where people can come and congregate together and enjoy meals with one another. There are a number of different activity spaces, great rooms, theaters,
Something they wouldn't have at
chapels.
home. I mean, they'd have to drive to the movie theater or drive to these different things, but everything is literally there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And they take field trips, like
Sure. You know, most of these places now have fully equipped buses and vans and fleets of cars. And
Heck yeah.
I ask, because I tour these properties with my clients to be their advocate, because it can be a lot, right? Like for your average family walking into an assisted living, it can be a little bit like drinking water out of a fire hose, because now they're confronted with all of this information. It's all these departments of things, and this is all the stuff we do. And so they'll leave and go, what did we just talk about? But so I go with them to help kind of make sure they've got everything straight.
Yeah.
But in every one of these buildings, the most rapid growth is in their transportation departments, because that's the big demand. People want to go out. They want to go to restaurants. They want to go shopping. They want
Casinos.
Oh, geez.
yeah.
They want to go to
Bingo.
their bingo. Christ. They want to go to their doctor's appointments, and they
Yeah.
don't want to worry about driving to and from. They want to be brought there. Great, you know?
So what if, like, you know, helping someone sell their house so they can go assisted living? What do I do with their stuff, or how do I help them with all their stuff? Because you know, they have so much stuff.
And that's the concierge concept, is that whatever it is a family needs, we can help address that.
You guys do that?
Them. We've vetted
Okay.
and developed relationships with a number of different organizations across our region to help with whatever it is the family may require. So if they need estate cleans, we have people we work with who we vetted who do estate cleans, or downsizing if they're not quite ready to move, but they need to downsize some stuff, and then they'll get ready to move.
So if they're in the process of selling, they have a place to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so they move and the house is empty. They're not living there, so we can sell it.
Right. We can help people with what's called a respite stay in assisted living. So a respite stay is a very popular option, especially for people who are eager to sell their home. They have a couple of months or a couple of, a year, or it's not a critical need for them to sell the home to short-term move to assisted living, but they could use that money somewhere down the line, right? So they can do a 30, 60, or 90-day stay in an already furnished apartment in assisted living, and that will free the home up to be open, to be shown 1,000,000 times a day until it gets sold. Yeah.
Okay, now what if someone gambled their life away and they're living in a home? I mean, there's value in the house, so they can liquidate that. And so what happens with someone who doesn't have anything?
So what we will try to do always is find a way to negotiate the best way forward for our families. So I've done this before. Doesn't work all the time, but I've done this before where I've been able to go to assisted living properties and sit down with their teams. Because again, I was an executive director. I worked in these types of buildings. I understand the budgets and where the money is spent and how it needs to be spent. So I've been able to negotiate for some of my families who've been in that difficult position, the ability for them to go into an apartment and defer their rent payments for a month or two while the home gets sold, or other things can be addressed, be it a reverse mortgage, but it could be a reverse mortgage or a bridge loan.
But this guy gambled everything and he owes money that barely covers the house. What happens in that scenario?
In that scenario, we do need to explore maybe a Medicaid option. Now Medicaid is it's a tricky thing to navigate.
To me, Medicaid means insurance for elderly. What else, when you're saying it, what do you mean by?
So Medicaid placements. So Medicaid placements are two different types of placements. You can have a Medicaid placement to a skilled nursing facility or nursing home, or you can have a Medicaid placement into an assisted living.
All paid for by the government paying Medicaid. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, mostly paid for. You know, if you have Social Security or pensions or things like that, that's going to be assessed first.
Okay.
And taken first, and you'll have a small living stipend per month to work with.
Okay.
But yes, that's mostly a government subsidized program. However, especially in terms of assisted living placement, Medicaid can be very, very tricky to get with because of the demand. So although there's an increasing number of assisted living properties in the state of Rhode Island that have a Medicaid program, the wait list can be anywhere between a couple of months and a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for that person who's gambled their life away, maybe on so maybe on a $500,000 house, they're going to walk away with $20,000, let's say for easy math.
Yeah.
There is ways to negotiate that with assisted living properties to create the best possible way for that person to stay long term, but they also need to not be gambling anymore. Like that's going to be these properties are going to be they're always going to be looking to help people, but they're trying to help a lot of people. So they want to make sure that if they are going to extend this type of help to somebody, they need to be taking steps to make sure they're managing gambling or something like that. With a nursing home placement, nursing homes are much more of an acute model, so much more of a medical model. That's your facility setting, and for the people who it works for, it's awesome. If you need a nursing home, I will help you find a good nursing home. They are out there. And if you have the need, you'll find that a nursing home is a great fit. With Medicaid, that is going to be predicated on whether or not you, A, are financially viable for Medicaid. B, do you have the medical needs for Medicaid? So you're going to need to have some assistance with your activities of daily living as part of your Medicaid placement for a nursing home. Now, an activity of daily living can be something that we take for granted every day, is something that we just do automatically. Getting dressed in the morning, taking our medicine, getting in and out of the shower.
That kind of activity.
Okay. Yeah. So those are activities of daily living, which for us can be very automatic. But
I thought you meant like walking.
Well, walking and escorting can be part of that, yeah. But it can be very difficult as people get older, especially if there is any element of cognitive issue that's even developing, or if somebody's recovering from a stroke or a break or anything like that. So it can be tough.
So going back to the financials real quick, what's this whole stigma of, all right, I got to hide all my assets?
Where that comes from is that Medicaid lookbacks are a thing. So
what if this person gets Social Security, pension, all that stuff, they get $7,000 a month? $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
Do they have to hide all their assets?
Well, that's not really a thing that can be. I mean, Social Security and pensions aren't really a thing that can be hidden.
So that's their monthly.
That's their monthly.
What if they own millions of dollars in assets?
At that point, with any asset planning, my recommendation, and I'm actually doing this right now with my own family, my wife and I are already starting our planning for our daughter. Our daughter is 6. And we're already planning for our future to make things easy for her. And so we're setting up a trust.
Yeah.
And that is something that I recommend that most families at least explore. To talk about setting up a trust, not necessarily for the hiding of assets, but for the preservation of assets for whatever the future may bring. And this comes from a personal experience as well, not just for what I do for work, but my father died last year very suddenly.
Oh, man. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. He was 62. He went to bed one night and didn't wake up. And there hadn't been a lot of planning that he and my mother had done. I'm the plumber with the leaky pipes. I was always over there saying, hey, Dad, you gotta, come on. I'll get to it. So there was a lot of cleaning up that needed to be done after he passed. My point is this. It is never too early to start planning for that stuff, because people can have a lot of assets can be kind of a relative phrase. A lot of assets for different families could be $10,000. It could be $100 million, anywhere in between. That's a lot of assets, depending on the family. So doing everything that a family can do to preserve those assets now is just smart policy for your family. So it's never too early, I think, to involve an estate attorney, somebody who can step in and tell you what you can do.
But what happens what happens to their assets if they weren't in a trust or didn't belong to someone else? They just take everything? Who's they?
Yeah, who's they? So the short answer is yes. A lot will get, you will have to do a lot
while they're alive, I'm saying.
Oh, while they're alive. So if they're alive, they have assets, they require a nursing home, for example. Average private pay cost for a nursing home in the state of Rhode Island is around $11,500 per month for a private room. So in that when you would mention a $6,000 to $7,000 income per month, well, that's still quite a hurdle to jump over in order to get those assets, to make that made up. So what a person could do at that point, they can still work with an estate attorney and try to preserve as much as they can in terms of assets. But if they were to apply for Medicaid right then, they likely wouldn't qualify financially. There'd be too much they'd be making as an income, and then the assets on top of that. And Medicaid is traditionally reserved for people who have less.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be a situation where they would have to utilize their assets to make up the difference.
How far back do they go? Was it 5 years? Okay.
It's 5 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they are thorough. And again, they, meaning the state. Every state has a different Medicaid program, right? So Rhode Island's got Rhode Island Medicaid, Massachusetts has Mass Health.
Because they want to cover that $11,000 or $12,000 a month.
Well,
what if the person gets that in retirement, Social Security, they get $12,000 a month?
Then they can utilize that entirely to supplement
and their assets safe.
And their assets would be safe, yeah.
So only if you want to get into Medicare. Medicaid.
Yeah.
Then that's okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
And yeah, and we could talk all day about Medicaid, because there's a lot going on with Medicaid and the state in terms of reimbursements and why the reimbursement rate for Medicaid right now is making things very difficult for people who are looking for a nursing home. It's not outside the realm to say that we are approaching a really critical breaking point in the state of Rhode Island for healthcare writ large. But with senior healthcare, with Medicaid, the reimbursement rate is so low relative to other states in particular that we're seeing ripple effects happening across, especially with skilled nursing placements, that industry. Lynn Healthcare over in East Providence just announced last week they're shutting their doors because the reimbursement rates are so low that it's becoming impossible for them to be able to provide adequate care.
Have enough people to help and work there.
Exactly. And I remember I was there just a couple of years ago when they did a grand reopening of Lynn Healthcare, and it was wonderful, and they're cutting ribbons and everyone's having a great time, and it's just, we can't wait for the future. The future is bright. Well, the future came 3 years later, and here we are.
So in the situation where they have to have assets in order to be able to move, so that means I have to help them sell their house, and then they can move, because then they have the money to be able to do whatever, or for them to take the money to the state. Or
in a perfect world, here's a perfect world situation. A family comes to Care Concierge or whoever they're going to use to make this happen for them. They create their plan, they make their move, they go into, let's say, assisted living. Home is sold in order to supplement whatever their average monthly income might be. Let's call it $5,000 a month. Let's say they get $5,000 a month from pensions, Social Security, all of that, and then they use whatever little else they need to pay the difference for their assisted living rent. And then 5 years later, and then at the time they've put that money from the home in a trust or something like that, let's say that. 5 years later, they need Medicaid. They can transition over to a nursing home, and hopefully the Medicaid rates have changed at that point, and then they can have a nursing home to go to, but then they can use Medicaid 5 years later because their assets would have been preserved in that trust. That's the goal. That's the perfect world scenario. Will that change over time? I don't know.
So I have a last question.
Sure.
But this is unique. So what if someone can't cover, let's say, a certain amount, maybe like $3,000 a month to cover their stay at a nursing home? Can they use that money that they got to sell their place, put it in, like, let's say they bought a multifamily with that can generate the income needed to fill that? Can they do something like that? Do they have enough time to do that?
Sure. I've had families do that before, where they take their money from the sale of their house and then they transition that into an income generating opportunity like a multifamily.
Okay.
I've had families do that. No problem. And a loved one could manage that property for them and help
or hire a
collect
property
rent,
management company, and you don't
Absolutely.
just money goes into your account every month.
That's absolutely possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what limitations and what kind of restrictions there are for them to be able to transition to that.
I mean, is
it kind of like rent? Like you got to pay the landlord the $12,000. You got to come up with the difference every month.
Yeah.
Is it like that?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah. It can feel like that.
So they're not requiring, you have to prove that you can get $12,000 a month right now in order to come in here?
If you were looking at a nursing home.
Nursing home, yeah.
Okay. So if you're looking at a nursing home and it's $12,000 and that's your private pay rent,
Yeah.
you know, that is a conversation about how do we get to the $12,000?
Yeah.
So is it going to be a completely private pay conversation? Is it a mixture, private pay, family supplement, you're using rent from this, whatever have you? Or is the payer source, which is what they call it, is the payer source going to be completely different? Is it going to be state subsidized? And will it be state subsidized, meaning Medicaid? Okay. So that will be that's the overarching conversation. And it can get families need to get sometimes very, very creative.
Awesome,
on
I
how
love
to
it.
do it. Yeah, and the headline is this: senior care is complicated. Be it with assisted living, memory care, nursing homes, home care, whatever. It is complicated. And it's changing every year in sometimes really dramatic ways. The impetus behind starting the Care Concierge was to help people navigate these really choppy waters. And most of these people come to us in the state of chaos and their hair is on fire because they don't know what to do and where to go, and they're being told they need to do this, and they're being pulled in a million different directions, and they just want the best quality of life for their loved one. We will help them do that.
Awesome.
That's us.
Wow, Paul, it's definitely like having you on our side in that situation, in that elderly trying to sell their house and moving into a nursing home or assisted living, having you on our side is a great team member.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming down today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Getting interviewed and celebrating the 10th episode.
That was awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So you have to come back again and we'll do there's a lot more that I want to cover, but yeah.
Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we can point at the camera. All right.